पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Namaste. Welcome to the 11th session on Bhagavad Gita, your source of inspiration by Jayaji. I request Jayaji to give us an overview of chapter 16 today.
We will begin with the invocation.
Sahana bhavatu, Sahanau bhunaktu, Sahaviryam karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Chapter 16. Speaks of the divine and the demonic. Every human being is a fascinating combination of divine and demonic qualities. We all have the devil in us, something that makes us pursue self-destructive ways. Yet, even the worst among us has extraordinarily divine traits. Our success depends on how well we are able to operate out of our own goodness and marginalize our demonic qualities. The chapter enumerates 26 qualities of the divine and 6 qualities of the demonic. Krishna assures Arjuna and all of us that he is born of the divine temperament. What is the basic difference between the divine? Excuse me. What is the basic difference between the divine and the demonic? A divine person looks inward for happiness and also for solutions to problems. He has a clear concept of the higher being. Everywhere you look in science, it is harder to understand a universe without God. He looks beyond the senses for fulfillment and is inspired by the spirit, Atman, which defies birth and death and is not governed by the rules of the universe. A demonic one, on the other hand, is extroverted, lives exclusively for sense gratification and enjoyment, and knows nothing beyond, does not even want to know. The divine person is secure, never lonely, though he may be alone, and has the capacity to live with others who differ from him. A demonic one is lonely even though he may be in the midst of people. He wields power by military and economic might, stock market gains, and political maneuvers. He wants power over others. So let's look at the divine qualities so that we may imbibe them to become better human beings and avoid the demonic in us. Verses 1, 2, and 3 speak of the divine qualities. Let's take a look. We'll do verse 1 first.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhihi Jnana Yoga Vyavasthitihi Dhanam Damascha Yajnascha Swadhyayastapa Arjavam.
Abhayam, fearlessness. Sattva Samshuddhi, inner purification. Jnana Yoga Vyavasthitihi, resoluteness in knowledge and yoga, union with self. Dhanam, charity. Sense control, yajna, sacrifice. Swadhyaya, self-study. Arjavam, uprightness. And tapa, austerity. So, fearlessness. All spiritual people are fearless. So, let's take a look at the 4 causes of fear. One is otherness. When you feel one with people, you're not afraid of them. You happily share your passwords and intimate details with your family members because you're not afraid that they will take away anything. But with outsiders, you put in protective mechanisms. All Indians are adept at breaking rules in India, traffic rules, income tax rules, all kinds of rules. But the moment that Indian goes to the United States, he becomes an absolute, upright, law-abiding citizen. Why? Because he is afraid of the New York cops. He is afraid of the IRS because of a sense of otherness. So, otherness makes you afraid. Ignorance. Most of us are afraid of death because we're ignorant of it. Perhaps if we knew what was going to happen after death, we would not be so fearful. Selfishness makes you afraid. All selfish people are driven by fear, obsessed with fear. No unselfish person is afraid because basically an unselfish person is a giver. So why would he be afraid of anyone taking away his things? So, fear. And then comes uh, aggression, destructive nature. Those who are destructive, like all carnivores, look over their shoulders to see who's chasing them and are afraid. Similarly, those among human beings who have a destructive nature are afraid. But one who fearlessly ventures into the unknown realm of the spirit is a divine person. Nachiketas went into the jaws of death, went to Lord Yama for Brahma Vidya. And why did he pick Lord Yama? Because he said he was so keen on getting to realization that he said, what if I die before I get to realization? So he picked Yama because once Yama takes on the responsibility, he cannot die before realization. What courage, what conviction, what fearlessness. Prahlada was not afraid of his father, who was the king of the demons, who tried every trick in his uh, armory to kill Prahlada and failed. Prahlada did nothing to protect himself. Right through, he was fearless. And in the end, in the court of Hiranyakashipu, when this terrifying form, Narasimha of Lord Vishnu, appeared out of the pillar, everybody trembled with fear except Prahlada, who stood like a rock. Ekalavya, he went to Guru Dronacharya for knowledge on archery. He was very keen on learning archery. When Dronacharya refused, he was not perturbed. He went, made a statue of Dronacharya and learned from it and mastered the art. He was even better than Dronacharya's favorite student, Arjuna. So, a divine person is one who sees oneness among different beings, is selfless, and works for the well-being of others, is totally unselfish. So there is no need for fear. He becomes fearless naturally. He also understands the law of karma and knows that his future is assured because his present karmas are good. And even if he has performed bad actions in the past and he has to face them, he faces them with courage. So he's fearless. Sattva Samshuddhi, purity. Purity means lack of mental agitations. He's free from, a divine person is free from agitations because he is acting on his conscience. He's following his conscience. Also, he's free from desire. Unfulfilled desires cause mental agitations. And he has a clear goal, directs all activities to that goal, is performing powerful positive actions. So he's free from desire, ego, and all the things that torment us. Steadfast in knowledge and yoga. He has a clear vision of the transcendental, of the supreme, and has an earnest, strong desire to get there. He's consistent in gaining knowledge that will help him unite with Atman. He has fixed as realization as the ultimate goal and puts in all his efforts to get there. Dana, charity, this is an outstanding quality that every one of us needs to cultivate because we have frozen into not giving. You know, in the past, historically, India has been through trying circumstances where there was famine, artificially created famine, created by the British, shortage of everything, even after independence. And so the mindset is that of grabbing, aggrandizing, acquiring, hoarding. You will allow things to go waste, but you will not give. So that has to be loosened up. You must get into the mindset of abundance. And the truth is, you do have abundance. Even the worst among us has enough abundance to give. So, dana stems from the awareness of the benevolence of nature, that you have received infinite blessings. A recognition of that, awareness, acknowledgement, and then you naturally develop the spirit of giving back, attitude of giving, just the attitude. You don't have to give anything. Physical giving will automatically come, but it is the mind that you have to deal with. So, first be aware of the abundance you have been blessed with. Understand that God, Atman, Brahman is ever giving and has given infinite blessings, showered infinite blessings on us. Be aware of that. Be grateful for it. And as a result of that, you will develop this irresistible urge to give, share, contribute, and give of yourself. And the pleasure in giving is so much that you will never go back to taking. In fact, the taking mentality itself will go. So when Sudama, who was an eternal giver in spite of the fact that he was in poverty, was asked to go to Krishna to ask for help. So he was going on a mission to take, to ask. Yet, because it was not in his DNA, asking, taking was not in his DNA, he goes to his wife and says, I'm meeting my dear friend after so many years. How can I go empty handed? This is an absolutely wonderful quality in the Indian culture, that you can never go khali haath anywhere. Someone invites you, you must take a gift. You have to meet somebody, give. At every juncture in your life, whether it's a birth or even a death, birthday, anniversary, whatever it is, first think of giving, or even a wedding. Now it's become you're looking for excuses not to give. Last year, when COVID first hit, 3 months down the road, a company that is doing exceedingly well asked me to give a talk to their employees and said, I don't take anything for myself, but we accept donations so that we will be better equipped to serve society. So the person in charge there says, we are going through bad times, so we can't give a donation. And when I was told that, I said, never mind, I will give you a donation. You are going through bad times, I will donate to you. I wasn't being sarcastic. I genuinely meant it. You're going through bad times, let me give you. But when they heard the talk, unilaterally, by themselves, they gave a donation because they were so overwhelmed with the quality of the knowledge, which is not mine, it's the Bhagavad Gita. So, Danam, why must you do? Because you owe it, because you have received. And the only way to receive in life is by giving. The law is, as Swami Ramatirtha said, give, you gain. The moment you think of grabbing, you don't even have to grab anything. The moment you think of, oh, how will I benefit from this? It's gone. You lose it. And you lose it with interest. Not simple interest. Not the interest that is charged by credit card companies, which is killing. But divine interest, which is 100 times worse. So watch out for that. It's a law. That is why giving dana is impregnated, included at every juncture in Indian culture, and yet we defy it. So you want to be divine, you want to evolve spiritually, first do charity. And don't do mechanical charity. It's not as if once you write a check of 5,000 to somebody and then say, oh, I've done enough charity. No. Every moment of your life, you must be acutely aware of the fact that you owe so much, that you are in a hopeless state of indebtedness, bankruptcy. And at every stage, you need to give. So you're looking for avenues to give every moment of your life. Then your life becomes wonderful. And giving is not just money, as we've seen in chapter 4. There is a hierarchy. Giving is the lowest, and even that we don't do. Then comes tapoyajna, giving of yourself, giving of your physical effort, actually going out there and helping. Giving your love, your knowledge. You're sharing your skills, teaching people. And the last is swadhyaya jnana. So then comes yajna. When you practice the the fifth quality is dhamma. Dhamma, the mind has a tendency to yield to temptations, to worldly enchantments. So dhamma is when the intellect holds the mind from indiscriminate indulgence in the senses for two reasons. One is you're dissipating your energies in unproductive channels. Number two, the law of diminishing return functions, where because you indiscriminately indulge, your enjoyment reduces until you get to a state where you don't enjoy anymore. So it holds back your objective. In other words, the intellect is greater than the mind. The intellect scans your desires, scans the urges to want to indulge, and arrives at the middle path. Not too indulgent, not too withdrawn. Just right, and just right is different for different people. So that the desires of the mind are quiet enough for the mind to be free to focus on higher things. That is Dhamma. And when you practice Dana and Dhamma, you will be blessed with a lot of prosperity, a lot of success. Then what do? You yajna. Yajna, you work in a spirit of service and sacrifice for a higher ideal, while maintaining inner restraint, Dhamma, and working without ego and egocentric desires. So again here, the intellect is in charge. Assisting others with your resources. See, when you work for a higher ideal, your personal desires, your ego is set aside temporarily, and your mind is calm. A calm mind makes for creative thought because you're dedicated to the ideal. as a means to get to realization, or even as it is, it's okay. So if you're working for the well-being of the country, then you're not looking at yourself. You're not looking at, oh, there's COVID, let me see how I can maximize my profits in this situation. It's not that. The thought is to, how can I use my resources, my talent for the well-being of the country? If I have a talent for business, I do business for the country. If I have talent for music, I uh, help people develop that subtlety through music so that the country may prosper. So yajna includes, a very important part of yajna is fixing a goal that is beyond your selfish, self-centered interests. And in chapter 3, Krishna categorically says, if you don't function with the spirit of yajna, you will not get success, you will not get happiness, and spiritual development is a far cry. Then comes Swadhyaya, constancy in Jnana Yoga, constancy in gaining knowledge. That is so important. Like Buddha. Buddha was totally committed to gaining knowledge because he knew that only that would help him overcome these four evils. He saw four sights and was astounded by it, overwhelmed by it, and said, I want to break free from this. So he worked towards it. Now, we move to verse 2.
अहिंसा सत्यमक्रोधः त्यागशान्तिरपैशुनम् दया भूतेष्वलोलुप्त्वम् मार्दवम् ह्रीरचापलम्.
Ahimsa, non-injury. Satyam, truth. Akrodha, absence of anger. Tyaga, renunciation. Compassion for beings. Absence of slander. Non-covetousness. Gentleness. Modesty, and absence of fickleness. So, ahimsa is not just physically not injuring anybody. Ahimsa means having the attitude of not wanting to do harm to anybody, not hurting anybody. So, yet, we have all the gods and even goddesses carrying weapons with them. How do you explain that? With a bow and arrow, Rama is always shown with a bow and arrow. Krishna was very assertive with his weapons. It's not that you become physically harmless, but mentally you're hurting people with sarcasm and negativity, and you harbor hatred in your mind for people. That is not ahimsa. There are people who are soft-spoken and gentle, but very, very hateful within. It is being not abusive in thought, word, or deed. That is ahimsa. When you understand that every living being has Atman in it, how can you hurt anybody? So when you see any living being, you approach it with love. That is ahimsa. Satyam, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as night the day thou canst not then be false to any man, said Shakespeare. So being true to yourself is following your conscience. If your conscience revolts against something that you want to do, you must abide by the decision of the conscience, the direction of the conscience. And you must follow your conviction, grow settled. Your inner voice is always steady. Your desires take you all over the place. Desire interrupted is anger. So desire is nothing but a thought flow going from you to a particular object or being. And when that thought flow is interrupted, when somebody else comes in between, then the thought flow is diverted towards the obstruction, and that is called anger. So there can never be anger unless there is an underlying desire. This is akrodha. Then tyaga. People are either unintelligently indulging in the senses or unintelligently withdrawing, abstinent. When both ways are bad, because when you indulge indiscriminately, you lose the enjoyment. When you withdraw, abstain unintelligently, it causes frustration in the mind, and that is also not good for you. So use your intellect for the middle path, madhya pantha, like Buddha said. And again, this middle path is different for different people. What is indulgence to one person may be abstinence to another person. So it depends on your personality. Then, so middle path. This, it is renunciation. Tyaga is a sense of dispassion towards the world through knowledge. You know what it is worth. And you therefore have a disinterest in worldly things, dispassion towards worldly things, because you have access to higher knowledge, higher enjoyments, more fulfilling things. So this is tyaga. Then shanti. Shanti in the absolute sense is no desires at all. See, it is desire, unfulfilled desire that agitates the mind. So to the extent you have more desires, to that extent you will have more agitation, because there is no guarantee that your desires will be fulfilled. Therefore, you have to be very careful in cultivating desires. Relatively, when the intellect scans the desire, is aware of the desire, guides and supervises the desire, then the desire transforms from lust, avarice, greed, which causes a lot of agitation, to aim, ambition, aspiration, goal, or ideal. These cause much less agitation. So you're far more peaceful. Paishunam, no slander, no calumny. You don't speak ill of anybody. You don't even think ill of anybody because you are too busy with your own development. You don't accuse others. You see, when you are struggling with your own desires, your own weaknesses, your own selfishness, and you know how difficult it is, you don't waste time passing judgment on others because you understand. You understand everybody has their own level. Everyone is caught up with something or the other. And in the end, everyone will make an effort to rise. If you happen to be better than others, it's because you've put in the effort in the past. That's all the difference. So it's a very, very important quality which helps you grow spiritually. You must make up your mind that you will not speak ill of anybody, not even think ill, and then see how much of your mind space is freed up. Because we are unnecessarily harboring hatred towards one person, jealousy towards another person, envy towards another person. And all of this agitates your mind and prevents you from growth. So you must understand that. Then daya bhutesh, compassion. People either don't have any feelings or they become emotional. They get carried away by emotions. Here, you have a deep feeling of compassion for people, but it is well under the control of the intellect, and you express it, you act on it only when the intellect says yes. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't reach out to people. It only means that you should not be victimized by emotion. So, what happens is, most of us have no compassion. A few people who do have it just act on that compassion, and in the end they spoil the recipient and they don't achieve the objective for which they have reached out. So this is Daya Bhuteshu. The intellect supports the mind to favor people, to be kind to people, to be gentle with people, to bless all at all times and all people. Then comes aloluptva, non-covetousness. This is another um, amazing quality. Most of us are constantly looking at what others have and covet it. So you look at a rich guy and say, who has is running around a Mercedes and say, oh, if only I had a Mercedes, I want it. This is terrible. So what the Bhagavad Gita says is not that you should not have the object, but be content with what you have because you understand that you get what you deserve, not what you desire. If he has a Mercedes, he deserves it. You don't have it, you don't deserve it, but you deserve other things. If you may have made choices in the past in your life in such a way that you will not get that Mercedes, that which is fine, but you have got other things. So when you understand it in the scheme of things, you are not covetous towards other people, towards what other people have. Then Mardavam, gentleness. Mardavam in a human being is like a soft, gentle breeze. It's so becoming. It's such a nice thing to have. Most people nowadays have lost their gentleness. They're harsh, they're crude, they're sarcastic. At the drop of a hat, this yelling at people, pointing out their faults. That's no use. So it's like this. A cook once told me, a servant says, I cook with my heart and soul every meal. And usually the meal is good, but nobody appreciates it. No one comes and says, Aaj khana acha hua. But if one day, one little mistake I made, maybe a little extra salt, or I forgot to add salt in the dish, everyone comes down on me like a ton of bricks. And that is true. How many of us appreciate our servants for what they've done, our employees for going well out of their way to do something for you? You should be quick to pick this up, appreciate it. Even a verbal thank you is enough for them. Look after them and their families. Not because you don't want them to leave, but genuinely you feel for them. There is a person, a couple, who came across one boy from a poor family. And the lady asked him a question. And he said something about study. And that couple helped that boy study through school because his parents couldn't afford it. He did exceedingly well, got admission into one of the IIMs, studied there. Now he's a top-notch corporate executive. This is what I mean. All of us have these opportunities to reach out to poor people, to reach out to people who are suffering from whatever. How many of us actually take that? Everyone has the capacity to make one such person like this man. And he has never forgotten what that couple has done for them. So he rides in an ordinary car and he bought a Mercedes for that couple. What a fine thought. So this is that gentleness that comes. Then modesty. Your conduct is well within your qualities and achievements. Uh, you understand where you are. There is no overestimation. There is no wanting, putting on an air of being superior to what you are. There is acceptance. This is my level and I'm happy with that. That's what a child is. A child doesn't perform perfect actions. A child is not perfect in so many ways. But a child is so attractive because the child just understands its level and is itself. It's content to be itself. and achapalam, not fickle. Impulsive behavior doesn't help you achieve anything. You've got to be steady. Then comes verse 3.
तेजक्षमा धृतिः शौचम् अद्रोहो नातिमानिता भवन्ति सम्पदं दैवीम् अभिजातस्य भारत.
Teja, brilliance. Kshama, forgiveness. Dhruti, consistency. Adroha, purity. Freedom from malice and pride. Sorry, Shaucham, purity. Adroha, freedom from malice and pride. Na ati manita is lack of pride. These belong to one born for the divine state, O Bharata. So these are the last 6 qualities that he speaks of. We will take just a few important ones. Teja, brilliance that comes from purifying your personality of desire and ego. So the light of divinity shines forth through you. You have removed the obstructions that you had placed there. So this manifests at all 3 levels. Physical attributes. Physically, you become an extremely attractive person. You lend a charm to everything that you do. Emotionally, you're chaste, benevolent, loving towards everybody. Intellectually, you're clear in your thinking, so the intellect illumines everything. And your life sparkles with cheer, dynamism, creativity, happiness, and you spread this to everybody. Kshama, forgiveness, comes from growth. When you grow to a higher level and you understand, like you look at children, you understand their nature, you understand that someday they will grow up. So you don't pass judgment on them. You don't you forgive them. It's not forgiveness, it's just understanding. Similarly, Maurice Maeterlinck says, happy and blessed are. You reach a happy and blessed hour when wickedness stands forth revealed as goodness bereft of a guide. So whenever you see wicked people, you don't see them as wicked. You see them as goodness without a guide. You understand that you have had the good fortune of proper education, upbringing, so on and so forth, because of which you are a refined, cultured person. The other person hasn't had that good fortune. So you understand, and that understanding is forgiveness. Dhriti, consistency with which you pursue your goal. This is done by the intellect. The intellect directs all your activities towards the goal that you have chosen for yourself. That generates energy. Otherwise, you're dissipating your energy in unproductive channels. Shaucham, a very, very important quality, which he talks about more than once, quite often in the Gita. And yet, today, India is perhaps one of the dirtiest countries in the world. We have no concept of hygiene. The Shaucham he's talking about is internal. An acute awareness of vasanas, ignorance, which then manifests as desire and ego, which you understand is terrible. And you want to break free from that. Now, awareness of vasana is very subtle. You cannot be aware of subtle impurities within you if you're not even aware of external impurities, dirt and filth outside. So the first thing we should do at a national level, which begins with the individual, is start a cleanliness drive. And if we all do it from the bottom of our hearts, which includes the environment, clean the rivers, clean the ocean, clean lakes, clean everything, we will be able to achieve it in a matter of 5 years if we have the will to do it. And it begins with each one of us. Don't wait for the government to do it. Every one of us must make that special effort to clean up our homes, our environment, the streets, the city, etc. Like you remember at one time, Surat was considered one of the dirtiest cities. One municipal commissioner arrived there, was posted there, luckily for Surat. That one man cleaned up Surat in such a way that Surat became the cleanest city in India. This is possible. Why can't we make Mumbai clean? Mumbai has the cream of the nation's assets in terms of people, training, wealth, so on and so forth. And yet we are not able to do it because we don't have the will, we have no awareness. Maximum we do is keep our homes clean, that's it. You step out of your home, there's filth. That also is part of you, right? Then no exaggerated version of yourself, no atimanita. Now, the basic difference between the divine and the demonic is knowledge. The divine have access to higher knowledge, while the demonic, deluded by greed, lust, desire, and ego, are ignorant of their potential. So they don't know what to do or what not to do. They are impure within and therefore lack good conduct. So let's take a look at verse 7, which speaks of pravritti and nivritti, the two paths available to us.
प्रवृत्तिं च निवृत्तिं च जनान विदुरासुराः न शौचं नापि चाचारः न सत्यं तेषु विद्यते.
The demonic people do not know what to do or what not to do. Nor is purity found in them, nor good conduct, nor truth. So, the basic thing is that every human being has been gifted with a choice of action. And along with this choice of action, we have been blessed with the intellect, which is denied to all other creatures, with which you can make the right choice. But for this, the intellect must be developed. And this is extremely important because between the two paths of pravritti and nivritti, pravritti, worldly pursuits, which give instant pleasure. Nivritti is inward looking pursuit, spiritual pursuit, which don't give immediate pleasure, but give happiness in the end. So this is a basic law of life, that anything that gives you instant pleasure gives you pain in the end. And that which is painful in the beginning gives you pleasure in the end. You must know this. Therefore, knowledge is of the essence. And thereafter, whenever there is instant pleasure available to us, you understand this is the path which will get me sorrow in the long run. So you turn away from that and look inward. Now, this doesn't mean you can't enjoy the things of the world. It's just that you are not invested. You're not running after. All your personality is not invested in just worldly activities. You are looking within mainly. And as a byproduct, whenever the world offers enjoyment which you have not sought, but it's just come to you, by all means, enjoy it. And even if you want it, you can seek it and enjoy it. That's fine. But the main thrust of your personality is inward looking. So then you don't know, because if the intellect is not developed, it gets confused. It doesn't know what to do, what not to do. This is the basic discrimination that we need to develop. So if you don't know, then you choose the wrong field, you choose the wrong kind of actions, and you end up in a mess. So all the wrong actions put together have disastrous results, and then suddenly it hits you. So the secret of success, progress, prosperity is lies in the right choice of action. So you must know what to do. Now there are 4 categories of people. One knows clearly the difference between good and bad, what he ought to do, what he ought not to do, makes the right choice, and leads a happy life. Second, gets confused, lacks this intellectual vision and foresight, but uses his intellect whenever he has to perform action. So that is fine. Sorry, the AC was too cold. Like, for instance, take the example of King Lear, Shakespeare's King Lear. He made a basic error in judgment, and that one wrong choice that he made led to disastrous consequences. What is the wrong choice he made? He went by sweet talk. So he had 3 daughters, and when he reached retirement age, he decided to retire and divide the kingdom into 3 and give the 3 daughters 1/3 each. But before he did that, he had this weakness for sweet talk. He wanted people to flatter him. So he called everybody and said, uh, he asked each of the daughters, first the eldest, what do you think of your father? Now, what is the need to ask this, and that too publicly? Don't you know how much your daughters love you? Don't you know the nature of your daughters? So that girl praised him to the skies because she knew that the kingdom, part of the kingdom was coming to her. All false. She actually didn't care for the father. She only cared for his money and the kingdom. Same with the second. When it came to the third, she was his pet and she actually truly loved the father. But she saw this drama going on, this ridiculous show going on, and was seething. So when the father asked her, what do you have to say, my girl? She said, nothing. And he flew into a rage. He said, nothing? Nothing comes from nothing. So he banished her. He said, I will divide the kingdom into 2. And he gave both the daughters half. At that time, the king of France happened to be there. So he went and asked for her hand in marriage. And the king readily gave because she was a pauper. The king didn't care. The king of France didn't care. He recognized her good qualities and said, I want her as my queen. Before marriage, she told the husband the same thing that she told the father. She said, before marriage, my entire loyalty was with my father. Now, after marriage, it'll be half and half. The king of France said, doesn't matter, I'll take you. And he got married. And then came the downhill story for King Lear, because both the daughters started treating him badly, took away his servants, took away his facilities, and the rest is in the book. So read it. So that fatal choice of action. Then, so the third is where you have no vision, no discretion, no intellect that operates even after the action. But much later you realize in retrospect and feel bad about it, but there is no way of making good that wrong decision sometimes. And the last is, last category is you don't use your discrimination before, during, or after. this is it. So the demonic declare that the world is meaningless and brought about just by lustful union because they are indulgent. So they think the whole world functions like that. They resort to insatiable desire. They have no discrimination to speak of, and therefore savage deeds. Such people cause destruction and harm first to themselves and to others, like Hitler. I don't know how many millions of people died thanks to that one man, Hitler. 6 million Jews and many more million soldiers. And how does it all begin? It begins with a thought, one thought. You experience an emptiness within, and thoughts arise in the mind that go out into the world to obtain objects and beings to fill that void. You believe wrongly that acquisition of worldly objects will fill the void. So you give in to sensual pleasures. One indulgence leads to another, and before long, you are enmeshed in the web of delusion, moha, moha jala samavrata. You get addicted to sense gratification and go into a downward spiral. And all this causes a great deal of stress in you. You lose your vitality, cheer, and energy. You become depressed. Pleasure turns to pain, and life becomes a nightmare. Many of us have actually experienced this. Still, self conceited, obstinate, and arrogant, you refuse to admit that you have gone wrong. And even sacrifices you perform ostentatiously against scriptural mandate. All this because you're ignorant of your divine birthright. And like this, you go through endless births, endless cycle of birth, growth, disease, decay, death, repeatedly born in the families of the demonic. If you still do not correct yourself and acquire such gross desires that cannot be fulfilled in the human form, you may even slip into animal forms. So, having described the perils of yielding to the devilish tendencies, Krishna now urges us to free ourselves from the three gates of darkness which lead to hell. They are desire, anger, and greed. So let's take a look at this. Verse 21.
त्रिविधं नरकस्येदं द्वारं नाशनमात्मनः कामक्रोधस्तथा लोभः तस्मादेतत्त्रयं त्यजेत्.
Destructive of the self, this gateway to hell is threefold: desire, anger, and greed. Therefore, one should forsake these three. Trividha means there is a subtle suggestion that they are all one. So, hell means mental agitation, it's not a physical location. This hell you get into while living because of extroverted pursuits, which lead to suffering and extreme sorrow. The demonic, the moment they lose sight of the self, they are chasing after desires, which are endless. They never end. And this leads to extreme greed and uncontrolled anger. So, greed and anger are modifications, mutations of desire. When you have a desire to earn money, you earn it more than what you ever thought you would. That leads to greed. You still want more. And when desire is interrupted, we've seen earlier, it leads to anger. So it is desire that needs to be combated and overcome. Just focus on desire. As we've all seen, Paripurna is your original nature. You are completely, totally full. When you don't know you are full, you become a fool. When you don't know you are F-U-L-L, you become an F-O-O-L, because you imagine an emptiness. And out of that emptiness arises thoughts, and a stream of thoughts towards a particular object is called desire. When desire is fulfilled, you get greed. When desire is obstructed, you get anger. Self-realization is samadhi, or mental equanimity, absolute stillness of the mind. What disturbs this is desire and its modifications. Thus, they destroy the self, he says. Actually, nothing can destroy the self, but it prevents you from knowing the self. A perfectly still mind is no mind. And when it doesn't have these three, when it's free from anger, greed, and desire, it is no longer running towards the world. So it is perfectly still. Now, whatever expressions you find of desire and its modifications, rise above them. Desire. See, by developing a higher desire, by developing higher values, you take care of the desire. You have go back to your own life. As a child, you had millions of desires. Where are they now? They've gone. Why? Because at every stage you picked up a higher desire. So to overcome a desire, to get rid of a desire, you can't just wish it away. You have to pick a higher desire. Then, if you don't hold this desire, now you're caught up with desire, you need to hold the desire with your intellect. If you don't do that, it runs riot. It develops this vigor, speed, momentum that destroys you, like it happened in Ravana's case. Ravana was a normal king who ran his kingdom really well. He was a good administrator, and he had everything that the world could give him. He had a harem consisting of heavenly damsels, not just from earth. And yet he wanted one more. And that too, Sita, because she was unattainable in his mind. So if he had consulted his intellect at the first thought, he would have dropped it. He would have been saved. But when you allow that desire, that thought to take root in your system, knowing fully well that it is not in your interest, then you're in trouble. So you look at people who have been convicted of crimes in the recent past, internationally. I don't want to name them because you all know them. These are not people who are poor, uneducated, illiterate. These were already rich. What made them cross the line and go into these murky areas is desire. Desire gone wrong. Therefore, the Ramayana tells us to have this Lakshman Rekha. Lakshman Rekha is this self-imposed control, where you tell yourself, whatever happens, I will not cross this. Then you're safe, because within that circle, you can do what you like. It's only when the mind wants to cross it that the intellect comes down sharply and says, no. So you have to anticipate and assess, and don't allow others to drag you downhill. Many people who have gone wrong have allowed, like alcohol addiction or drugs. A friend just came and said, try it. And you have had it then. A lifetime of misery. So it's like Cassio, the captain in Othello. Iago, the villain of the piece, lured him to drink. And he got drunk and misbehaved. And when Othello came, he was mad with Cassio. But Cassio's fault was, he's not an alcoholic. He just gave in, succumbed to Iago's thing. So even a highly sattvic desire can agitate you. Even the desire for realization can prevent you from getting to desire. And that is the best part. So, anger and greed are mutations, yet in the world, desire is encouraged, fanned, and promoted. Nobody understands the devastating effects of desire, which is your greatest enemy, says Krishna. The doors to your soul are kept shut, and you live and die without so much as a glimpse of who you are and what you're worth, your power and magnificence. If you follow your divine nature, you do yourself good and uplift others as well. You live a life of success and happiness and eventually transcend the world to attain liberation. Often we follow the path of least resistance and succumb to our own worst qualities. Sadly, the best in us lies unknown, unsuspected, untapped, unacknowledged. The Bhagavad Gita shows us the way out of darkness and ignorance to the light of knowledge, a path by which the worst tendencies can be silenced and the best qualities promoted. The Indian culture and lifestyle nurtures all that is good and eradicates the evil within. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Discover the 3 paths to master your inner self at the Guru Purnima webinar by Jayaji on Saturday, 24th July. Please join us and encourage family and friends to attend the live webinar. We look forward to seeing you all tomorrow.